Mai hoki mai ki tēnei kaunihira, ki tēnei hui. This will be our last council meeting of this term. Before we get underway, I do just want to acknowledge that yesterday we had the moment of silence for previous councillor and local leader Alec Wilson, and we wish his family all the best, including Councillor Waru. I would now like to invite Councillor Barker to open up our hui with a karakia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tutawa mai runga, tutawa mai raro, tutawa mai roto, tutawa mai wahu. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, kāki e.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barker. We do have an apology from Councillor Waru and also from Councillor Brown. Are there any other apologies? Can I please have a mover and a seconder? That's moved by Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Any declarations of interest today? Any minor items to be raised? Yep, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I just ask that it be noted that former Councillor Ben Benfield passed away, I believe, on the 17th of August. So could I ask, with your indulgence, if we could just record, one, his service, and two, our appreciation for that service, and also our condolences to his family, whānau and friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. We will note that accordingly. Any further minor items? Nope. We will move on then to confirmation of the minutes. So we have confirmation for the minutes on the meeting held 23rd of July, also the 6th of August and the 13th of August to be true and correct. Can I please have a mover and a seconder, and then we'll check if there are any corrections required. That's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kai Fong. Any corrections to those minutes? Page 6, 20 and 27. Appear not to be, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That is carried. We don't have any public forums as we're in the pre-election period, so we'll move straight into our staff reports. We're going to start on page 35 of our council agenda, and we have deliberations and adoption in the City Safety Bylaw and Policy Review consultation. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to receive this? That's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Barker. I'd like to invite John Paul and also Alex to overview this with a presentation. All those in favour to receive this, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Obviously, this is a very specific set of adjustments to a number of bylaws just to improve city safety and safety outcomes for our community. So Alex has got a reasonably detailed presentation just to guide you through some recommendations for you. Over to Alex.
Kia ora koutou. Hello everybody. So we'll begin with just an overview of the consultation itself. So the consultation ran between the 1st of July to the 1st of August. We received 97 submissions and 5 of those wanting to speak at a hearings process, although only 3 turned up. In terms of the engagement, this was a largely digital campaign. We had targeted retailer meetings, so these were kicked off prior to the consultation, continued through the consultation and post-consultation as well. In terms of direct emails and letters, so we contacted many stakeholders, including all building owners in the city centre, with the veranda, local businesses, social organisations, iwi, the business chamber, anyone that we thought would be interested in the consultation. So just as a reminder, these are the 4 consultation topics. So we have the solid waste bylaw, the traffic bylaw, the general bylaw, and the dangerous, affected and cemetery buildings policy being discussed today. So we'll kick things off with the solid waste bylaw. So we had 83% of people agree to the proposal here and 11% disagree. In terms of those who agreed, in terms of the key feedback themes, we had responsibility, with a quarter of those respondents believing that ultimately it's the retailer's responsibility to collect their trolleys. Aesthetics was another theme, with many people commenting that the trolleys are an eyesore. Alternative mechanisms was another theme where many respondents proposed alternative mechanisms to the ones that was consulted on, such as geofencing. And finally, the kind of last key theme here is around funding, with many people, so 15% of those who responded believing that ratepayers' money should not be used to fund this trolley service. In terms of those who disagreed, there's only one real theme, and that was that they didn't believe it was the retailers' fault that their trolleys were being removed from their premise. So you'll see there are 4 options today in terms of this bylaw. Options 3 and 4 are new options, and I'm going to go through those in a bit more detail in the next slide. So we've got option 1. Option 1 is the option that we consulted on, so that is the kind of council-led proposal. So we've called this the high care approach in this slide. Hopefully elected members are familiar with that terminology. But essentially it's the council-led trolley collection service. Also included in the bylaw that we consulted on, there was a requirement in addition to this for retailers to collect their trolley within 24 hours. We think it's useful to kind of frame this problem and this conversation as treating the trolley collection as a service like graffiti. We've done some approximate calculations and estimate it to be around $50,000 to implement. We may be able to do some cost recovery via the mechanisms that we consulted on. And the expenses will be kept under review. So that's just to make that clear, that we'll make sure that any expenses are kept under review, and we can see how much this costs, how compliant the retailers are, and how much money we are recouping. And ultimately, this means there will be guaranteed trolley collections. The trolleys will be removed. Option 2, so that's the do nothing situation, so that's kind of rolling over the existing bylaws. That means the entire bylaw and all the other changes that have happened will remain unchanged and nothing will change in terms of trolleys. Option 3, so this is the new option, one of the new options, and this is really just to recognise that other elements of the bylaw was also reviewed and updated. However, you may not agree with some of the trolley requirements that we're discussing today, so there's that option as well. And option 4, so we've called this the retailer burden approach. So already in the consultation document, there was a requirement for retailers to collect their trolleys within 24 hours if notified by the member of the public. So this option really kind of leans in on that requirement. If we go for this option, we will have an additional reporting requirement to try and keep the retailers accountable. Of course, we won't know necessarily who's been contacting them and how many trolleys, are being reported to them. The only sort of enforcement that we can do in this option is prosecution. However, we would need to meet, a high burden of proof to meet that. Outside of the bylaw, other things that we could do is encourage members of the public to report the trolleys that they find directly to the retailers, and we can publish the number of trolleys that are abandoned by retailer. So some of this information is already collected at this moment, so it's just kind of gaining some public attention on it. And ultimately, with this option, there is no guarantee that the trolleys will be removed. So before I go back to the 4 options, I just wanted to delve a bit more in detail into option 1. So this is the proposal that we consulted on, so the high care approach. So we received some legal advice during the consultation that we cannot charge the $150 storage fee, and that's because it includes the costs for the initial retrieval of the trolley. So we've had to change the mechanism somewhat, so that it will still be council collects the trolleys, retailers have 24 hours to pick up the trolleys free of charge. However, after that period, council will return those trolleys and use the delivery fees set out on the consultation document. Whereas previously we would wait a month, we will now immediately do that. And in addition to that, there will be a storage fee of $30 per trolley. So those are the changes. So if option 1 is chosen, this is the mechanism that will be used.
Can I just add a couple more pieces to that, and it's probably quite important. The constant review piece is really important about the charges we're putting in place. So that gives us that opportunity just to make sure we're fine-tuning it. The second part of the discussion that we've had with retailers and Alex has coordinated is also to make sure we're not actually deterring the businesses from their own collection services. So if we provide too simple a service, we will have some who choose to actually retrench from their service and use us as the vehicle to do it. So we're trying to strike that balance. So that's an important consideration in us keeping things under review. And the third piece here was if we do this in this format, there is a future opportunity to consider how we fund it. So there's always a question in the future, once we get some understanding of the cost of the service, how much it's used, that comment where we're currently paying gives us the opportunity to have a more fulsome conversations at the LTP period about whether there's another mechanism for collecting the costs from those retailers with trolleys, and I sort of come around to the rating mechanism as a potential, as a way of targeting the cost to those retailers who are the exacerbators and causing the service for us. So this gives us an opportunity to open a door on some potential further improvements if we proceed. So I just thought it was worth clarifying at this point.
Thank you. So this is everything that we need to say really on the trolley front. So I'll probably pause for some questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you, Alex. Just a question, if I may. The 50k estimated costs on an annual basis for the option 1 collection. And then I think you talked about if we went down the road of enforcement, putting the onus on the retailer, and you talk about in their prosecution, I think the word was used. What would be that sort of likelihood of prosecuting? You know, the cost of 50k versus taking them to court, what could we be looking at for a court case?
I think prosecution, well, council today, as far as I'm aware, has never prosecuted. I think there is a high burden of proof to prosecute. The Solicitor's General Guidelines on prosecution means that you need to meet a series of tests. You know, it has to be within the public interest, it has to be proportionate to the offence, so I think it's potentially quite unlikely. We could do it, maybe, if we had enough evidence and it was did meet all these tests. So it is available to us. So,
subsequent question. If they chose to dig their heels in and be belligerent, and we did decide to take them to court, we could be looking at $10,000-$20,000?
Yes, yep, I believe so. I think it would cost us in the thousands. I heard an estimate the other day that was around 8,000 if we wanted to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning. Thank you for the report. I was wondering if you could summarise the views of the retailers who own the trolleys. What's their position on this?
Sure. So I think it's very fair to say that the retailers don't want their trolleys to be removed from their premise, and just to make that clear that they're not happy with the situation either. In terms of the proposals, most of them felt like the proposals were fair and reasonable. Obviously, we've added on option 3 and 4, so that wasn't on the table during the consultation. So I ensured that I contacted all the retailers and offered them the opportunity to speak to us about the new options, particularly around option 4, which is leaning more heavily into that retailer burden approach. And honestly, none of them really pushed back too much. I think they just wanted to make it clear to all of you today that they weren't happy with the situation, but understand that, something needs to change.
Okay, thank you.
I do just have a question regarding this as well. I've heard the reference of the retailers as the exacerbators, but of course, as we saw through the feedback, that it's not them that are taking their trolleys for a walk a couple neighbourhoods away. It is members of the public, and while I appreciate that the recommendations before us are using the tools that we have, is there also in further consultation or future improvements the opportunity to have a conversation with government regarding the ability for people to, if they leave with a trolley, it is actually theft, whereas at the moment it's so loose there's no ramifications for them to be able to, and I think that's actually the problem here, not the retailers who, by the most part, provide essential services to our community.
I think you're correct, Your Worship. I think that is a really important question to ask the government. My understanding is the Minister of Justice is here next month, and the Chamber of Commerce is trying to coordinate a meeting for retailers to talk to the Minister of Justice about some of the challenges they're facing. And I would have said this is a prime candidate to identify.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. Has any thought gone into the possibility of delivering the trolleys directly back to the retailers? I'm wondering if that could be actually more efficient than bringing it back to a RDC location and working from there?
Yes, so unfortunately under the Local Government Act, to follow the cost recovery process, we have to give a notification period. So we have to give the retailers the ability to pick up the trolleys to recover any costs afterwards. So if we just delivered it back, there is no possibility of recouping any of the expenses for carrying out the service.
And I think, Councillor, the risk there is that we have actually proceeded to provide them the full service that, to a degree, some of them provide themselves. So there would be no incentive for them not to simply rely on us to collect and return all of their trolleys.
Thank you.
There appear to be no further questions, so we'll move on to the next one. Thank you.
So the Traffic Bylaw 2018. So for this, we had 92% of people agree to this proposal and 6% disagree. So this was the most supported proposal that we consulted on. In terms of the key feedback themes, we had just under a third of respondents that agreed with the proposal mentioned some sort of negative, unwanted, intimidating experience in the CBD, which is quite high. Safety was another key theme, with respondents wanting the CBD to be safe for visitors as well as those that live here. And another theme for those who agreed was that this measure would improve the image and reputation of Rotorua and create a more welcome environment for visitors. In terms of those who disagreed, there was no key feedback themes. So the two options today are presented to you again. So option one is adopt the new bylaw, and option two is to roll over the existing bylaw.
Any questions on this one? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you both for your report. Could I just ask, JP, has there been any feedback from the police about what follow-up they can offer in terms of if we adopt this today, like what's the buy-in that they can?
Councillor, you've raised this question previously, and it was a good one to ask, but it is the same as what we've experienced with some of our other bylaw enforcement, particularly around trespassers. So they expect us to have gone through the full steps of educate, encourage, before we start to consider actually the enforcement mechanisms, whether it's trespass or any other sort of actions. Generally, the team are making sure, and we're lucky with our partnership with the police, that we can have those early conversations, so that if we do move to that situation, and I'll use trespassers as an example, that we've scheduled things to work together. Subsequent to that, there is always the caveat that police put in place, which is around availability. So they do need to prioritise work. So most of the time they've been extremely supportive, and the key for them is early engagement with us about our intentions, so that they can resource us and support us.
Thank you. And just a couple of supplementaries, if that's okay. Thank you for that. So if we adopt this today, this will apply to state highways as well as local roads?
Yes. So state highways, they're covered by NZTA. This bylaw will primarily just apply to the local roads.
Thank you. So forgive me. So then if someone's doing this activity on the state highway, does this come under?
The police will look to synchronise their attitude towards both activities. So the police are delegated to undertake all of the people like begging or window washing in intersections on state highways. This brings us more in line with what's available to NZTA with their relationship with the police. So I think there'll be a conversation about making sure we're consistent across the two areas.
Thank you. So when you say part of our obligation, shall we say, will be education, so how will that be handled? Will that be handled by our guardians advising people?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So, and that includes on state highways?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Can we enforce that, though, on state highways? Because, sorry, I'm not quite sure that you've...
No, we're not able to enforce it. So when we've advised them, and again, our relationship with the police and NZTA is also, we've got our CCTV camera coverage, which also gives them the information. So it's part of that communications, but to the actual enforcement, it is police who can only do state highways.
Okay, thank you. And is there existing laws about this on state highways at this moment?
My understanding that there is rules that cover the state highways because they have and do enforce sort of those nuisance and dangerous behaviours on the state highways currently, so it is covered.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
I will just add as well, the problem is mainly around the CBD and the city centre, which will be covered by the bylaw, just to reassure councillors.
Thank you for that. I suppose just my concern was if local roads were going to be covered, but they felt that people, undertaking this activity could just go to the state highway and we're not going to cover it well. But thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. In support of the education aspect of this, I'm going to speculate wildly that not all window washers watch council meetings. I was thinking, would it be helpful if the guardians were provided with an information sheet that could be presented to the window washers that explain the new bylaw?
That's certainly something that we can look into, yeah. So all the Safe City Guardians are trained on the bylaws and will, yes, first use education. Hey, did you know there's a bylaw? So if you think it's helpful to do a handout, we can certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, there appears to be no further questions, so we'll move on to the next slides. And elected members, we're going to go through the whole presentation and then we'll take each item one by one, ask for a mover, a seconder, and then have discussion then. Thank you, Alex.
So moving on to the general bylaw, so we had 90% of people agree to this proposal and 9% disagree. So in terms of those who agreed with the proposal, community safety was a key theme, with respondents stating that this proposal was needed to keep people safe. Many also noted that the CBD looked run down as it is and this would improve its appeal. And responsibility was another key theme, with many people believing that ultimately it was the building owner's responsibility to maintain their veranda. And in terms of those who disagreed, there were no key feedback themes. So the two options, again, just like the last slide, are presented for elected members to consider. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. What feedback have you had from property owners? What kind of financial burden might this place on them?
So in terms of the respondents, it was quite difficult to determine who was a resident and who was a building owner in the city centre because, we just had people's individual names, private individual names. But we had 90% of people agree, 9% that disagreed. Of those that disagreed, although there was no sort of key themes that came through, some of the feedback was that there was already regulations in place to kind of handle this situation.
It's easy to agree to spend somebody else's money, though, isn't it?
So all the building owners were contacted, so we did direct emails, we did a letter drop for those that we didn't have an email for, and on top of that we had the Guardians drop leaflets around to all the businesses and properties in the CBD. So we really wanted to try and contact people to let them know that this change was happening, and we did give our best efforts to let them know.
But you don't have any accumulated response from them in particular?
Say that again, sorry.
So there's no consensus or particular responses from the property owners?
So in terms of the responses, unless they said, hi, I'm a building owner, a property owner, that was very limited in terms of the feedback. No one said that. They were all given the opportunity, just like everybody else, and we had 90% of people agree.
Thank you.
There appears to be no further questions. Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, so the final policy today is the dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings policy. So we had 84% of people agree to this policy, 14% disagree. So for those who agreed, the key sort of theme was safety, and that it's the priority. And some people had personal accounts of unsafe and hazardous buildings in town, and there were no key feedback themes for those who disagreed.
And open for questions. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your Worship. JP, could I just ask you, do you think that with Council's objective to try and bring accommodation into the CBD at some point, or certainly increase what's currently there, do you see any obligation if we adopt MB's rules? One of the things I hear from developers who talk about this say that many of our buildings are in a state that it would be cost prohibitive for them to convert some certain buildings. And I just wonder, is there a possibility we may be actually making a rod for our own back unintentionally?
Councillor, I don't believe this makes the cost and implication any worse than it currently is. I think you're correct. There's the conversions of a current commercial property to residential puts in place additional entry egress requirements, a whole bunch of fire requirements, other than simply the alterations. So that is the key drivers of some of those costs and the benefit cost of whether a development stacks up or not. I would believe this is in the extremely marginal, if any, impact.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, appears to be no further questions.
Perfect. So that was the end of the presentation, so thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Alex and JP. You have a further question? Sorry, Councillor Lee?
If I may, just grab one more question,
Yeah, of course.
going back to the verandas situation. Surely the shops already have to provide safe verandas under the Health and Safety Act. Can you remind me why this bylaw is necessary? What are we?
Do you want to start? And I'll come.
So under the district plan, they are required to have a veranda. Currently, the rules and legislation that exist are not sufficient enough to make the building owners fix or maintain their verandas, which is why we're implementing this into the bylaw today.
No, and simply adding to that, you're correct. So the veranda is part of the building. So it's a requirement in the CBD and some other areas that a veranda is part of the building and building development there. Where there is a dangerous veranda, in a condition where it's dangerous, we have to go currently through the Building Act, which takes a significant amount of time. At the same time, we're wearing the health and safety risk because that veranda protrudes over our public space. So that is the challenge we've had. So we've got a number of areas where, in effect, we're coning off our public footpath and limiting people's ability to actually use the footpaths we provide whilst we go through a protracted process and talking to a building owner about the state and safety of their veranda.
So have you identified, have you got some particular verandas in mind that are a concern to you?
We've got examples where we've had created problems that we have taken, had to take action through the Building Act. One of them was being held up by 4x4s for over a year, required us to invest in an engineering assessment for us to then take action under the Building Act. So that's one example. So over a year, significant cost to council. And during that time, I would have said risk to our community. And I had reported incidences of the 4x4s holding up the veranda being kicked out by members of the public. So we actually had a dangerous situation there. So the Building Act, which is intended to ensure a building is safe, but it's easier to make safe a building when it's private property. The issue with the veranda is they protrude over our public space. So that's the issue we're seeking to address. There is other verandas around the city where we've got some concerns and we're engaging with building owners. Tenants are frustrated, so there is a real challenge for us, and we believe this is a really effective mechanism that actually deals with a problem we currently have.
Excellent. Thank you for the response.
Okay. Thank you, Alex and JP. So what we'll now do is we'll take these one by one, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. So we first of all have the Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025. That's moved by Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Councillor Wang. Just checking what option that was.
Move option 1.
Okay, so that Council adopts option 1, adopt the new Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025 as consulted on, and then this one also has point 3. So is that a move and seconded for 3A or B?
So
sorry, it is 3A.
Both of those. If we adopt one, if that is supported, then obviously I think JP mentioned the fees and charges need to be kept under review.
Okay, and that's also 3A. If option 1 is adopted, any fees and costs associated with abandonment of shopping trolley collection will be kept under review. We're open now for discussion, if there is any.
As a mover, I think this topic's been covered quite significantly, both through the bylaw, sort of the hearings process and in previous discussions. I think it's something we just need to get on and do. We've been trying to deal with this directly with the retailers for some time now, so it makes sense to do this, and it's also a cost recovery exercise so that ratepayers are not burdened with the cost of recovering the trolleys. And we also want to make our streets look much nicer when our tourists and residents are driving around.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My understanding that options 3 and 4 weren't there previously. So we only ever really looked at, they were added on.
Thanks. I'll just get Greg to explain further.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. This was covered as part of the presentation. These options were added on as a nuanced approach to some of the feedback that has been received, and also providing an opportunity for you as elected members to potentially go, look, we like what's in the bylaw, but we don't like the trolley clause, therefore we want to go with option 3, or some nuanced approaches to that based on what feedback was received. Right. So that's why those are there.
That's what I thought. Thank you, just to clarify that. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the 50 grand potential OPEX. It's not CapEx, so it's a chunk of money that retailers really, that ratepayers may be having to cover, when perhaps it should be on the burden of the retailers. I heard this morning that Australia, admittedly it's Coles, made $1.2 billion in profit this year after they introduced geo-locking for trolleys, more security cameras in store, special gates to allow you access to the store. They spent all that money on security upgrades and they still made a $1.2 billion profit. So supermarkets certainly can make a fair chunk of cash. So 50 grand, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. I agree with the rest of the bylaw, but I think perhaps option 4 might be more appropriate. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Kiriopa?
I too support, agree with what's just been said. I feel like we're bending over backwards for supermarkets, who we all know are part of the reason we've got a food crisis in this country, because they're making billions of dollars off people for our food. So why should our ratepayers be paying $50,000? I mean, we might get some of it back, we might not. I'm supportive of trying to put as much pressure on supermarkets to deal with their trolleys as possible. So I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barker?
Thank you, Worship. I can see that there is concern around the cost of this, supporting this option, and I do note that there are attempts in this option to redress that through the collection fees, holding fees and the like, and it is also obvious in the 3A that these will be reviewed routinely and regularly so that we actually make sure that the charges are appropriate for the service that we are delivering. We're not trying to deliver a service as such, even though I've just said that. It's actually more to make sure that our city and our CBD don't get littered by trolleys, and it's just one way that we can actually make sure that this happens, recover some of the costs through these measures and keep an eye on it over time. So while I agree that there are other ways to do it, I think in the first instance this is a good way to start the approach. So I support this option. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I hear what Councillor Patterson and Councillor Kiriopa have said. But for me, I will be supporting this. I think I'd like to acknowledge the work done by Councillor Brown previously when he approached some of these retailers. There has been significant improvement, but there seems to be a stubborn percentage which we always see around. And I think we've done the verbal talking. It's time for some action. And then personally, I think perhaps down the track, if this doesn't work or the cost exceeds, maybe an option like the geo-locking, which I think Councillor Patterson and Councillor Lee have brought up previously, might be a future step. But we've done everything, we've taken steps appropriately, so I'll be supporting of this today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. And just to add to the comments that have already been made, I also support this approach, but I do note the frustration. And personally, I wouldn't have called it abandoned trolleys, I would have called it stolen trolleys. I don't know any other piece of property that you can pick up from somebody's premise and remove back to your own dwelling or leave somewhere randomly in the community and not be considered theft. And I think that is actually at the core of the problem right here. We do have really good retailers. Both Deputy Kaifong and myself have visited many of the grocery stores under a community safety concern and talked with them, and I do understand it is of frustration to them as well. So we've heard the feedback from our community. Something needed to be done to fix these trolleys. It's maybe a frustration to us all, but at least the problem will be solved and we'll get the opportunity to recollect the cost of providing this service per se. So there seems to be plenty of discussion. I'll just check if the mover or seconder had any final comments. No, we will now put this to the vote. That's point 2, that Council adopts option 1, and adopt the new Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025, and any fees and costs associated with the abandoned shopping trolley collection will be kept under review. All those, and I'll just ask if you could raise your hands, please. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Thank you, that is carried. Yeah, we will record that, thank you. So we will now move to our next one, which is the Traffic Bylaw 2025. Do I have a mover and a seconder for either option 1, agree, or option 2, disagree? Councillor Patterson has suggested to move option 1, agree, adopt the amendments to Traffic Bylaw. Is that? Yep, seconded by Councillor Kai Fong, and we are open for discussion. If there is any. Fairly straightforward. Okay. Oh, Councillor Patterson.
Just as the mover, thank you, Your Worship. It's time to do something about that before somebody actually gets seriously injured. I had it outside MP Todd McClay's office the other day, 2 of them, and the lights went green after being red, and they didn't even move. They stayed there. Now, somebody's going to get hurt, whether it's a driver or a pedestrian or one of them. We need to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? No. I do agree with this as well, and I do also encourage that we have a conversation with other councils in our region and across the country about how we can deal with this, because one of the most concerning things that I found is when people who are begging at traffic lights appear to be from out of town. And so it becomes quite lucrative, and it's a shame that they choose to take advantage of the kindness and care that our community provide. So this is one way that we can help to ensure everyone's safe, because you are right, health and safety needs to be the top priority for us all. So that has a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? That's carried, thank you. And we'll now move to the General Bylaw 2025. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this one? That's moved by Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Councillor Wang. Do you just want to...
Happy to move option 1, agree to adopt the amendments to the General Bylaw 2025.
Thank you. Any comments on that from anyone? No, but I will just mention as well regarding the general bylaw that there is also, despite the cost to the building owner, there is also cost to others, including ourselves. Some of these verandas, the water's been leaking off it so much that pavements have had to be replaced multiple times. And of course, you may have seen the cones out preventing the public from even being able to walk underneath the verandas that are not safe. So again, this is just us listening to our community and dealing with the problems that arise. Okay, well, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. And we now move to the final one, and then after that, points 7 and 8 is just noting a few things. So we'll just focus on the Dangerous, Affected and Unsanitary Buildings Policy 2025. Moved, Councillor Kai Fong.
Signal option 1.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wang. Would you like to speak to that?
I think once again these are all just fairly self-explanatory and common sense. So,
thank you. Any further comments? No, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That is carried. Now we also have point 7. Now these notes are apparently standard practice for when bylaws are being accepted. So we've just got to note that the collective bylaws are the most appropriate way of addressing the issues consulted on. The collective bylaws with the amendments proposed are the most appropriate form of bylaw to address the problems consulted on. And the collective bylaws with the amendments proposed does not give rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor O'Brien. And point 8, that the Council resolves the Waste Management and Minimisation Bylaw 2025, Traffic Bylaw 2025, General Bylaw 2025 and Dangerous Affected and Unsanitary Buildings Policy 2025 will come into effect on the 1st of September 2025. This excludes the Abandoned Shopping Trolley Clause, which will come into effect on 1st of October 2025. Any discussion on this? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would imagine that a bylaw preventing people from window washing would tend to infringe on the freedom of movement in the Bill of Rights. I'd say it was reasonably justified in the circumstances, but just saying.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comment? No. I do know that it has been a difficult one. Tauranga City Council had some problems when trying to stop begging in the city due to that as well. But I would just note that the clear difference here is that we're actually ensuring the health and safety of people as well. We should not have people on the road when they're moving vehicles around as well. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to support what you've just said, I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere where a couple of either beggars or washers have been there have been accidents. So I feel that we have an obligation to do everything knowing about this issue to at least be proactive and try and dissuade these people from these activities. So I feel, yes, maybe there'll be further issues, but at this moment, I think we have an obligation, being aware of these issues, to take every practical step, and this is practical as far as I can see, so I'm fully in support. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I tōtoko Councillor O'Brien's comments there. If we knew about it and chose to do nothing and somebody was seriously injured, perhaps we could be held accountable. So it's best that we step up and do the right thing and be proactive rather than let it just slide and bear the consequences down the road. So yes, I support this.
Thank you. Well, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you. Now we are going to move on to our next item. This is page 51 in our agenda. Can I please have a mover and a seconder that the report Proposed Plan Change 10 Definitions and Rule Refinements, Adoption of Proposal for Notification be received? That's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour to receive it, please say aye. Thank you. And we now have John Paulbeck and also Simon to overview their presentation and also speak to the report. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, a presentation just to guide you through. Plan changes are not insignificant in the steps that are required to be taken to get to a point where we actually notify a process. So Simon's just going to guide you through those steps and just detail the timeframes.
Awesome. Thanks, JP. And thank you, councillors. We reported to you back in May, I believe, giving you the advising that we were heading down this pathway of preparing Plan Change 10, which was essentially to address a series of technical and definitions and operational matters, things that have been causing us, a bit of confusion or trouble over the last couple of years, particularly through implementation, through stat hearings, and the basic general usability of the plan. So the point of the plan change is to, I guess, improve clarity and consistency and to address those matters above. I guess the value statement there at the bottom there, undertake a plan change that will add value, noting obviously the impending RMA reforms that are likely to take a number of years going forward. So as we advised in May, the scope of the plan change, what was it addressing? We are trying to address the tourist accommodation and boarding house definition, removing boarding house from that tourist accommodation definition. amending the community housing definition, amending the unit title definition to align with the Unit Title Act, amending the city centre default permitted activity status rule that's in the plan currently, and then the rule in regards to reversing onto right-of-ways wireless telecommunication provisions, and also the basic just aligning various definitions within the plan with the current national planning standards. I'm sure you've all would have heard over the last couple of months Minister Bishop announced the announcement from the government that all councils were to stop any further work on plan changes going forward. Obviously, that legislation since I think last week is now in place and is now law. Her Worship, we wrote to the Minister back in I think beginning of this month, just to get a general sense or an early indication of whether we'd be allowed to progress with the plan change. We didn't hear from the Minister on that letter, but just as a bit of context, the bill does allow a number of exemptions for plan changes to proceed, one of which being things like natural hazards, which we are also progressing. But as it says there, it also allows plan changes to progress if we believe that they rectify any provisions in a plan or a policy statement that have unintended consequences, are unworkable, or have led to inefficient outcomes. And this is where we believe we have a good chance of being granted an exemption due to that point there. So as I say, yeah, we believe there's merit in continuing with the plan change, given the nature of the plan change and also the timing of the reforms, and purely on the basis of what it states in the Act as what can be exempt. So what does that mean for us as a council? We will need to apply for a formal exemption to the Minister for us to enable Plan Change 10 to continue and for us to go ahead and notify, should Council choose to today. So yeah, as I say, based on the report to Council, we're also requesting today from Council a delegation to seek an exemption from the Minister in regards to the plan stop requirements and to request approval to proceed with Plan Change 10 through to notification and through to a hearing if needed. So based on what happens today, what are the next steps? We are currently preparing a formal request for exemption should the Council agree to proceed today. Should, obviously, if that exemption is granted by the Minister, we'd be aiming to notify in October this year and looking for a potential hearing in early 2026 next year. So that's a quick overview of the plan change. Happy for any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. JP, this week you'll recall that a further troubling and confusing issue arose pertaining to the district plan. Would you be able to explain to my colleagues the issue that we were confronted with this week, which could potentially fit into a plan change of this kind?
There's probably two aspects to that, Council. There's a number of issues that people raise with us about concerns about rules. We went through a process of identifying the ones that were most significant, and we'd advised you about 6 months ago what those would be, and have been working through the steps that are required to start progressing towards a plan change. We often have a number of outstanding issues that people have raised with us. So yes, there has been some new ones added in the last couple of weeks or last week. They would go onto the list that we currently have, and if there is a view, again, probably for the new council, that some of those deserve another minor changes, definitions, correction process, we would have to begin say a plan change 11, which would go down that route. Now again, the challenge for us is the changes that Minister Bishop has put in place. Again, it would probably be early engagement from us as probably a a set of experience would be developing out of the Minister's office about what is appropriate to still be considered. Outside of that, it's a moratorium until the RMA reforms are in place. So it's not something that we can quickly address. So while someone says, hey, I've got an issue with a rule, you should just change it, it does go through quite a significant process leading through to obviously the Section 32 analysis. There's a requirement to consult early or engage early on some of those changes. So it's not a quick process.
Yes, thank you, JP, but that didn't actually answer my question. Could you explain to my colleagues the particular issue that arose this week concerning the lakefront operators?
Point of order, Your Worship. I'm just wondering whether this is relevant to this discussion, because JP's just described how we've had a process. Thank you.
Well, the reason it's potentially relevant is one option that could be available to elected members today would be to leave this on the table to give time for the staff to add this additional item to the plan change, which could easily be adopted by the incoming council. And so it would cause a delay of maybe a couple of months, but it would actually tick off another nuisance item that has recently been discovered in the district plan.
Thank you, Councillor.
So my question was, what was the could you explain to my colleagues what the issue is that we have discovered?
I actually agree that's not quite relevant to this. That will be a separate issue that perhaps the future council could deal with. What we are seeking here is just to ensure that the adoption of proposal for notification can actually be received, and that basically we allow our chief executive to continue, we provide him the authority to approve the final Section 32 and basically continue to apply for an exemption. There is a time period where after this council meeting we will also hand over the powers to the chief executive as we go into the election period, so there's not too much more we can do from after today until the newly appointed council comes in, but at least the work that's been quite some time in the making will hopefully continue to be able to be progressed under an exemption.
The problem is if we don't piggyback this item onto this plan change, it's going to be pushed back years until the next plan change after that, and for a minor delay of a couple of months, it would seem worth considering if we were able to comprehend what the issue is that we're wrestling with here and how significant it might be.
Okay, well, that is a separate issue to what we're discussing today, but I will just ask the Chief Executive to respond to your particular concerns.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's important to understand the broader context that we're operating in, and that is the government has been pretty clear that they want local government to go away from defining specifically the matters that Councillor Lee, I believe you're referring to, what activities can be carried out where. There is an RMA change coming that will be much more prescriptive. We've been led to believe will be much more prescriptive around activities in zones around the country. I believe, based on what I understand, it would be appropriate for that any changes to this district to be considered within the context of that new legislation. And if we try and do changes to use as part of this change, it doesn't meet the definition of the exemptions that the Minister has outlined for the changes that he might be willing to consider at this point in time. So by keeping it narrow, we're more likely to get that exemption agreed by the Minister because it is more aligned with the conditions he has outlined. And obviously after the RMA reform is the right time to have those broader strategic conversations around what activities might be appropriate in different parts of the district. I'm seeing nods, so it must be that I haven't said anything too wrong.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. That's helpful.
Any further Councillor Maxwell, followed by Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thank you, Simon. I know you've spent a lot of mahi on this campaign over some time in that now, so I acknowledge you for that. I see the RMA amendment bill has passed its third reading, so things are going smoothly on track. The question I want to ask you is, are you confident with the exemption that may be granted by Minister Bishop that we're asking for?
Yeah, definitely. We believe that it meets that criteria on there. So it's basically the point of this plan change is to correct inconsistencies and correct issues that are causing trouble with the current interpretation and the current implementation of the plan. So yeah, we 100% believe that that first point there in red, that this plan change does seek to address those very issues. So, but again, it's obviously in the hands of the minister, so anything could happen.
And Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So my questions revolve around what's in scope. Points 1 and 2 there, the tourist accommodation boarding house definition and the community housing definition. Obviously, that will help clarify any future potential misuse of those premises. So where does rehabilitation centres fit into this?
So they are under they come under the health and medical centres. So we believe that they now would fall under the existing definition of medical centres, essentially. So community housing would still have that level of care provided for community housing, but things like rehab centres would come under the definition of medical facilities and centres, which is already a definition in the plan.
So there have been cases of operators saying that they are community housing.
Essentially. Yeah.
And yet they're not. So is there an actual definition that says, no, you have to apply for this, or?
Yeah, so it comes down to what activity you are. So we believe that things like rehab centres fall under the activity of medical facilities and not community facilities, essentially, which is what some have been trying to, I guess, apply for under that understanding.
So final question, is that enforceable?
Under the district plan, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first is a question, and then after that, if I could seek a clarification from you, if that's okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for your report. Could I just ask, in regards, we've had previous talks about Papakainga housing. Is this, obviously this isn't the time you've taken for that to be re-looked at this stage. Are you comfortable that future, I believe you are waiting on, was it the government to sort out their own?
That's right, yes. The government's
definitions?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. Sorry, the government, it's obviously, they're about to release, obviously, all their new national direction and their new environmental standards. And one of those new environmental standards is in regards to Papakainga. So, which is why we didn't want to address anything as part of this plan change. I'm waiting, obviously, for the government to release that new direction and then go from there.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, Your Worship, could I just ask, given what Councillor Lee has brought up, is he seeking an amendment to what's been proposed? The only reason I ask is while JP's there, if he was seeking to follow up what he was saying before, I may have questions for the staff, but I'll leave it for him if he's happy with what the motions are as is.
I'm happy to respond to his question, Your Worship. I'm not planning on moving an amendment. I was contemplating a motion to leave it on the table to allow an extra item to be put on. I think Andrew's answered a question rather comprehensively that wouldn't work too well, so I'm comfortable with that outcome.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And Councillor Kaifong.
Just another point of clarification. I'd be happy to move, but I'm just wondering if the resolution, because it now becomes a resolution, should actually, where it says approves the changes subject to recommendations 4 and 5, that should be paragraphs or point 4 and 5?
Well, if you're happy to move, I'm happy to second, and then we can correct that.
Just so that when it's read as a motion, it then means that 2 is subject to 4, and it's not a recommendation, then it actually becomes it's a condition.
Yep. So there does appear to be no further questions. So what I think we'll do now is, now that we have a mover and a seconder, we'll just open up if there's any discussion. And thank you very much, JP and Simon. Okay, so we'll just remove the word recommendations.
So I think it should be point or paragraph 4 and 5, and that should also follow down and.
Was that right? Just getting rid of the word recommendations?
Yeah, so it's paragraph 4 and 5, or bullet point 4 and 5.
It's okay.
And it needs to be fixed in the.
I think we get the intention there. That's fine. So we are for discussion. Is the mover, do you wish to?
I think, once again, this is just a sensible piece, and we should press on. We have had the difficulty with the definition around boarding houses for quite some time. That flowed on from when we were dealing with emergency housing motels, and the difficulty we had with finding a definition for policing that type of activity, which did actually cause quite a significant harm in the community, and was also just a source of concern in the way in which those properties were being operated. The other things are tidy up definitions, and I think there's just, once again, common sense just to deal with those all in one, and hopefully the Minister will accept the very strong request that you have made in your letter, Your Worship, to accept this as an exemption to the current changes.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? No. We will then put this to the vote. Do you need me to read it out? No. Okay. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you. I think we'll take one final item before we break for morning tea. So we'll go to the draft non-financial performance measures. It's on page 60 of your agenda. I'm happy to move that we receive. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. And we invite Greg to overview the report. This presentation is also an attachment in your Stella as well.
Good morning, Your Worship. Morning, councillors. Thank you for allowing me to present this morning. This is our draft performance management framework for the first year of the long-term plan. The reason this is draft is that this is still going through an audit process. We have the auditors on site from the 8th of September just to finalise not only the financials but also the results of this framework. I will go through this relatively quickly. There is quite a lot in the attachments to this paper. The focus of the non-financial performance framework is to track the progress of the long-term plan from a service delivery perspective, not a financial perspective. The new framework was developed through this long-term plan in 2024. The ultimate, objective of this framework is to set the level of service that the community can expect from us within the funding envelope that the Council adopts in the long-term plan. It measures the progress by setting viable targets seeking to be achieved, and it uses evidence-based results to set about improvement plans for balanced services into the following year. We have 9 activity groups in our long-term plan, so we have performance measures across those. We have 64 performance measures in the long-term plan that span across all of those activities. So how did we do in this financial year from a draft results perspective? I just wanted to note that following the bringing forward of this agenda to you, we have one other result, and so there will be a slight change from the underway and the not achieved, but very, very slight. We have one result that has been followed up. So we've got 70% that have been achieved, with 28 that are not achieved, and 2% that is yet to be measured. Council's 3 warders have performed really well this year, with only one measure not achieving, and that is our water loss measure. So that's a 95% achievement across the 3 warders of stormwater, wastewater and water supplies. Customer satisfaction across all of the activities has reached 6 out of 11 measures achieved. Our spaces, places and recreation, there's achievement across the events with non-achievement across 2 of the library measures and some Learn to Swim and the Learn to Swim program measure. Noting that these have been brought forward through some of our committee reports previously, so you'll be familiar with some of those measures. The consenting timeframe still remains under pressure in our district development area, and then in community safety, non-achievement across 2 of the food control measures and the alcohol licensing satisfaction measure, with the building warrants of fitness audited and our CCTV monitoring still not achieved as well. I'll just briefly run through each activity. So we have, in our community leadership, we've got 1 measure that's been achieved, which is no decision has been overturned by judicial review. We've got 2 that have not been achieved, and these relate to our resident experience monitor survey. And then there's 1 that's still underway. We have a survey out currently around our platform for engagement. Community safety, we've got 5 achieved measures across emergency management, animal control and inspection on licensed premises, and 5 non-achieved measures across food control, BWAF audit, CCTV, and council's alcohol licensing service. District growth and development, there's 3 measures that have been achieved, and these are the number of net dwellings, our LIM service statutory day compliance, and our building consenting days compliance. We've got 3 non-achieved measures, largely across resource consenting timeframes, and then the customer satisfaction across those consentings. Spaces, places and recreation, we've got 7 achieved measures, 4 relating to events and available days in the EEC and the Sir Howard Morrison Centre, the Aquatic Centre satisfaction and our parks and open spaces satisfaction measures. 4 non-achieved measures relating to the customer interactions and people participating in partnership programs at the library, number of lessons at the Learn to Swim program at the Aquatic Centre, although we are seeing a trend upwards in that space following the opening of the Aquatic Centre from the previous year, and then the satisfaction rating for security in open spaces. Our transportation infrastructure, we've got 5 achieved measures. We've got an achievement of our condition on the condition of the network. Our road resealing is up from the previous year, and as it was not achieved last year, it is achieved this year. Our response times have improved as well across from the prior year, and our customer satisfaction has been achieved across the network. There's 1 non-achieved measure, which is the number of serious injuries and fatal crashes, which is up from the prior year. Our stormwater has all 6 measures achieved. We've had no abatement or infringement notices. There's a low number of complaints on the network performance, and our customer satisfaction is higher than our target. Our wastewater also has all of them achieved. There's no abatement or infringement notices. The target response times have been met, and our customer satisfaction has been met. Our waste and sustainability, only 2 more. 3 achieved measures. The reduction in curbside collection volumes is achieved this year. I don't think that was achieved last year. Our resource consent compliance and customer satisfactions are also up this year. There's 2 non-achieved, which is the reduction in the amount of waste sent to the landfill and the curbside recycling contamination. And then our water, as mentioned earlier, we have 9 achieved measures, and that's across all of them. The one that hasn't been achieved is our water loss target, which is just slightly above the target for this year. With that, I'm happy to take any questions and maybe pass on to any of the general managers for their areas if required.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Greg, for your report. Just the waste and sustainability measures, the reduction in the amount of waste sent to landfill. What are we trying, isn't FOGO going to be, when that comes in, that'll help put a dent in that?
I might defer this one across to Stavros.
The answer is yes. With the introduction of FOGO next year, 50%, additional 50% of the household generated waste that goes to landfill at the moment will be diverted to composting or beneficial use, and obviously that will address that issue.
Thank you. And I suppose the councillor then coming in could consider also encouraging composting at home if they don't produce enough to actually warrant getting involved with FOGO, but I guess that's up to them. My other question is regarding the water. It looks like all of our other 3 waters did very well, but the water itself, great to see drinking water's spot on. Is the one that failed is that leaks?
Leaking water is, Councillor Patterson, is one of the contributions of the unaccounted for water. The fact is that because we do not have water meters in every property, we make assumptions as to what is the average consumption of water per property. We cannot make assumptions as to how much water lost in each individual property. Remember, we've got almost 800 kilometers of public pipelines, but it's another 500 to 550 kilometers of private pipelines. And at this point in time, we rely heavily on generic assumptions of how much water is consumed per individual property. So in the majority of that, because we cannot meter every property, we make assumptions, and what we call unaccounted for water is just exceedance in some cases of what we assume to be the average consumption of water. But in general terms, it is water that we believe is lost through the system.
Right, so it's not coming from our pipes.
Well, it's not verified as coming from all our pipes. As I said, we have 800 kilometers of pipelines. Private properties got another 550 kilometers of pipelines. So we just have to make some assumptions here as to what's the distribution of that are accounted for water.
Thank you.
And Chief Executive will also provide a response to your question.
Councillor, thank you, Worship. Councillor, just to clarify on FOGO, as you mentioned, when the LTP measures were set, there was an understanding that FOGO would come in the year that we're currently in, hence the targets, and hence we haven't met them. You made a comment about the next council deciding. Just want to remind councillors that based on the decision to postpone it, council did approve the execution of a contract, so we are locked into a contract to commence FOGO at the prescribed time. So, if a council did want to change it, there would obviously be commercial implications of breaching a contract that we have signed. So just wanted to clarify, it's not really open without consequence for the next council to change their mind yet again.
Thank you. And for those wondering, FOGO is food and organic waste collection and was consulted on as well. Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you, Greg. I want to comment about the very good stats and that we have there regarding the stormwater. But can I say this year, winter, I think we had the wettest, coldest, greyest winter that I can recall, or is it just me? Can I ask through you to Stavros, in comparison to previous times, and that am I right that this was the worst, wettest, coldest winter?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Maxwell, no. 2023, it was one of the wettest years we have seen in the 1970s. Our average rainfall for the district is about 1.4 meter of rainfall per year. In 2023, we have 3.7 meters, for that year. This year, it's just slightly above the 1.4 meters on average, but is nowhere near what we had in 22-23.
That was very impressive, Stavros. Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Greg, for the report and all the information in it. This might be more of an observation, but I'll couch it as a question if you do have a reply. In the community leadership space, the percentage of residents that agree or disagree how decisions are made represents the best interest of the district. This is a fairly subjective kind of method to gather feedback, I would say, perhaps, and you will always get people who agree or disagree with the decisions that council makes. So is this a helpful question for us to be asking to try and gain some meaningful feedback? Is there a better way, perhaps?
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Yep, we can potentially explore that. This is one of those measures that has been locked in through the LTP and will be there at least until the next long-term plan has been part of the audit process. I think just coming back to that survey that is sent out, we send that out to 6,000. We have a contractor who does that on our behalf, to 6,000 residents every year, 1,500 a quarter. We've had over 400 responses, and so this is just taking into account, like as you say, what the specific feelings are about that. we've got some anecdotal thematic analysis at this stage, which, as you say, can be around sort of engagement, not feeling like they've understood projects that have gone out, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we can definitely keep looking at that and explore that for the next long-term plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have questions from Councillor O'Brien, Lee, and then Wang.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the Chair, thank you very much for your report, Greg. My question is to the Chief Executive to ask what steps he'll be taking for those measures where we're not meeting, and also in the short term, and also what will be his priorities for the new council coming in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien, through you, Your Worship. There are a number of these measures that are called council performance measures, but that's somewhat misleading because they're not a reflection of council performance. They're a reflection of how the district is performing. So if we look at the waste measures, so one of them we discussed, which was waste minimisation, diversion of organic waste away from landfill, but there's another one around contamination of recycling, which there's a certain amount council can do, largely through education and education programs. There's a question with the change in legislation whether education around waste is considered core services or not. So debate I enjoy and I look forward to having with the new council because as you've seen, some of the performance measures that this council has adopted are outside the direct control of staff, and they depend on us influencing behaviour in the community. So to answer your question, there are a number of measures that I'd like to see improved that are within our scope of control, and we're seeing that in our change programs from various departments. Other ones are ones that I'm going to bring to council. So from my understanding, this is a significant improvement from the past. It's up to the new council to say, is that acceptable? Do we want to raise that higher, or are we comfortable where it has? Because some elements of that will have some cost implications and some of them won't. So the ones that obviously are within council's control, I've got a program to address those, and I'll make that clear to the next council. The ones that we need to do something differently out in the community, those will be also discussions for the next council to consider. Do we want to raise that bar, or are we happy at 70%? Decision for the next council.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. So could I just ask, so it could be, is it roughly 2 months away when the new council's sworn in? So what's your priority on some of the things that we're not achieving now in that space of 2 to 3 months?
So my priority is looking at the core services that council offers and looking at our performance measures across those. So obviously the one that we've talked about already across our 22 measures on water, we've obviously got one around leakage. Going back to Councillor Patterson's question, we can't know exactly whose those leaks are, but I can be very sure that some of that, it's a non-zero number, that are leaks. But can we do some work to give the next council some idea of what it would cost to reduce that? That's the sort of work that I'm doing and the whole team is doing to put together as part of the induction program for the new council.
Right. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Contrary to Councillor Barker, I think the particular measure about residents' perception of whether we're acting in their best interests is actually a very important measure, and it is noteworthy and disappointing that we've only hit 41%. Something for us to reflect on, I think. My question, however, follows on from Councillor Patterson's line of questions regarding FOGO. There will be a financial consequence of cancelling a contract. There would also be a financial consequence with continuing with the contract. Could you give us some sort of indication, Andrew, as to what the financial implications of cancelling might be?
Councillor, I won't.
Yeah, so I think that's not quite relevant to this discussion, and also I imagine would have commercially sensitive implications to that as well. Do you have any further questions?
Further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Greg, for the report. My first question is just around underneath community safety, around the new food control plans being inspected within 6 weeks after opening for trade, and how the target was 100% that was not achieved due to the reporting limitations. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that and how come that happened.
Councillor, we've reported previously there, I think it was the regulatory report done to CNDD last month. So we highlighted there that there has been some, the most substantial part of that was resourcing. So that put us behind for Q2 and Q3, and we picked it up again in Q4, but did not achieve the year-end position. The system problems were just a couple of early teething problems which accounted for just some non-recorded times. So that just, we parcelled those up as being a failure to comply because the dates weren't recorded accurately as we transitioned to the new system.
Thank you. And also underneath your area, JP, under the district development for both the land use and the subdivision non-notified resource consents process within the statutory timeframes, as both of them were not achieved as well, but you did provide the information in them that the competing priorities, like the fast-track applications and training the new consenting staff. But since there has been a slight increase in the result in the final quarter, are we using other measures such as contractors and outsourcing that to try to meet that target?
Councillor, you're correct. We've had significant staffing challenges in availability over the last year and a half that I've reported. We were starting to get back to almost a full complement, and we do continue to use external consultants to try and cover those. So that's been our main drag. The additional point there was a committed resource who was pretty much dedicated to fast tracks. So the last quarter, our resourcing has been better. So you're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that appears to be all the questions. Thank you very much, Greg. That has already been received, but just checking if there was any discussion. Nope. So we will move on. What we'll do now actually is take a short break, and we'll come back at 11:15, where we'll then get into the delegations to the Chief Executive and then on to the confidential items. Thank you very much. We'll see you at 11:15. Underway. Thank you for that short break. We are going to now go to the delegations to the Chief Executive during interim election period before covering the confidential items to be released, annual report update and recovered water management solution working group construct before going into confidential. So may I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the report delegations to Chief Executive? That's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive, please say aye. We'll take this report largely as read, but I'll just get Greg to provide a brief overview for those who may not be aware of the usual process.
Morning. Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to delegate to the Chief Executive across the period from when the results have been announced to the inaugural meeting where the swearing in of elected members happens. This is in line with legislation. It's something that councils do across the country, and that's to ensure that if a decision has to be made, it can be made at the delegated authority of the Chief Executive. I'm happy to take any questions on that at this stage, Your Worship.
There appear to be no questions, and I do note that any actions, if undertaken, will be reported to the first meeting of the new council. Okay. So, I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor Lee, and I will just read it out. Point 2, that subject to the limitations set out in Clause 32(1) of Schedule 7 Local Government Act, the Council delegates all of its responsibilities, duties and powers to the Chief Executive for the period from the day after the declaration of election results until the swearing-in of the new Council, subject to a requirement that the Chief Executive may only exercise this delegation in consultation with the person elected to the position of Mayor and may only attend to those matters that cannot reasonably await the first meeting of the new Council. Those actions shall be reported to the first meeting of the new Council. Any discussion on this item? No, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. So we will move now to confidential items to be released for the period between May to July 2025 on page 67. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive? That's moved by Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour to receive this, please say aye. Thank you. Again, we will take this report mostly as read and just get Greg to overview.
Thank you, Worship. So I'll take the report as read. This is just bringing the report as we usually do to cover the last few months of confidential released items. Happy to take any questions.
There appear to be no questions, fairly straightforward. So we will move on to the next item. So the next item, did you have a question? Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
Well, I was just noticed that there's a late item, so I was waiting to see whether the late item was going to be held in confidential or not. So if you were to continue and complete your sentence, then you may answer my question.
Wait, what do you mean, Councillor Lee? So the next item that we're going to take was the late items agenda, page 3. There is part of this now. And then there is also a verbal update that will be provided regarding this in confidential.
Right, I was thinking of the recovered water management working group construct.
Oh, that's being discussed in open.
Right, that was my question. Thank you.
That's okay. So we will now, this is the late items agenda that's attached, and I'll invite David Jensen and Michelle to come and overview the report. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive 24-25 annual report update. It's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Wang. All those in favour to receive, please say aye. Thank you. And we'll now pass over to David and Michelle for any questions.
Good morning, Your Worship and elected members. Thank The purpose of this report is to provide an update on Council's draft unaudited position at the end of the financial year. Audit have been working solidly through their program and will be back on site in the beginning of September to conclude their work program. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to take elected members through to have an opportunity to see the draft position before the cessation of the training. So as I've covered and through monthly updates, there have been a number of significant events through the year that have changed Council's operating environment. The bringing back of Infracore into Council as the Works Department, and also the decision to move events and venues to Rotorua NZ have altered the operating environment when we're comparing financial results against what was budgeted in the long-term plan, and it has made things a little bit awkward as we've reported on through previous months. You'll see in the profit and loss statement that's attached that the Council has recorded a draft unaudited deficit position, and that is as a result of the impairment of the historic wastewater treatment plant work in progress, and also the treatment of the process costs related to Rutakaki. So just emphasising that the position shown in the profit and loss statement is reflective primarily of those two transactions, and when we normalise Council's operating income statement, Council would have otherwise been in a surplus position. Just going into a little more, I'll spend a few minutes just going into a little more detail on some of the more significant aspects of the draft unaudited position. You'll see that rates revenue is higher than was budgeted for in the first year of the long-term plan, and that is entirely as a result of more people paying the Rotorua capital sewerage rate as a lump sum as opposed to the 25-year repayment period. That's a timing issue, so we received more money in year one, and we'll be reducing our forecast in future years just because we've received the timing of that money earlier than we've projected. Development and financial contributions have ended the year significantly under budget, and I've covered that in previous meetings for the reason why. There will be a period where, while we flush out consented development that was received by Council in years that we did not have a policy, and hence there is no fee payable, and we'll be back into a position where we are collecting DCs on development once we have dealt with that backlog of historic applications. The finance income was significantly higher than budgeted, and that was a great opportunity that Council took with an arbitrage opportunity where we recognised that we could get more, we could receive more money on interest by putting funds on term deposit rather than repaying debt. And so there's a large positive variance for interest income, which offsets the interest expense by just over $2 million. So Council made an interest saving of just over $2 million through their arbitrage opportunity. And lastly, with income, you'll see in the capitals and the subsidies and grants. I've talked in previous meetings about that year-end test where we look at our capital works program, how we've tracked against the conditions in some of those grants to see whether we can some of the money that we've received and we're holding on balance sheet and revenue in advance. Have we met the criteria and the paperwork to call that income? So that year-end test meant that there was about $8 million of money that we had received previously for the museum that we could now call as income because we have met the construction criteria in that grant paperwork. So you'll see there that grant income is above what we have reported in previous months. Personnel costs, and we'll turn to expenses. The personnel costs include the bringing of Infracore staff back into house as the works team. So just covering off that point I made earlier about some of the actual transactions being different to budget, and that's a good example there of that movement was not budgeted for in the long-term plan, and hence there is a variance that we're reporting in the draft annual report. With revaluations, so in the income statement, you'll see an $85 million revaluation gain for the year. So if we have $2.3 billion worth of assets. We revalue each significant class within a 3-year period. This year we have revalued land and buildings, the art collection and the landfill, and we have recorded a $85 million revaluation gain upwards as a result of that revaluation work. You'll see there that turning now to the balance sheet, Council has ended the financial year with a higher cash balance than we budgeted for in the long-term plan. That is a result of some excellent work the team have done there around chasing some of our overdue debtors. You'll see there that there's been a significant reduction in the people who owed us money at year-end, our debtors, and that means that we're holding higher cash at the end of the year. And lastly, with liabilities, Council's net debt at the end of the year was $460 million, which includes the $10 million we received from the Ministry of the Environment towards the Rotorua Sewerage Scheme on an interest-free basis. So we start repayment on that in 2027. And the net debt in the draft unaudited annual report is just over $10 million lower than we had budgeted for this year in the long-term plan. I'm happy to take questions on any of the draft unaudited numbers in the report or the attachment.
Thank you very much, David. Any questions? Councillor Lee, followed by Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Did I hear you correctly, David, that you said that were it not for the impairments, we would have not had a deficit?
Through the Chair, so decisions that Council have made through the financial year included a $6.9 million impairment of historic work in progress on the wastewater treatment plant, so that number is included in the deficit shown there, correct?
Yes, so if that was taken out by my maths, that would be $750,000 still in deficit. Were that transaction not there?
Through the Chair, so in the opening sentence of my report, I cover the treatment of the impairment and the decision to not include the protest costs with Rotorua within the capital rate that we struck for the Tarawera sewer, the capital rate. So there's about $1.8 million related to the protest costs at Rotorua as well within that.
Gotcha. Thank you. I missed that bit. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your report, David. Did I miss the final total we got for the short-term rental revenue?
Through the Chair, I'm going to be a little imprecise. I don't have the exact rounded numbers right in front of me. We struck the rate on the basis that we would collect. From memory, about 700,000, or a little higher than that. Through the course of the year, we offered the opportunity for affected ratepayers who were targeted by that rate to sign the statutory declaration, which removed them from the rate and brought the total down to about $500,000. So it'll be slightly north of $500,000 from that rate last year.
So just to clarify, the target was 700k and we ended up, because of the adjustments, at around 500.
Correct, and rough numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of clarification, I think it was around 450, so that we ring-fence the marketing costs for Rotorua NZ for the destination and tourism marketing development. So 450, I think, actually was the target that we were seeking to recover from the short-term rental accommodation rate, as I understood it.
Sure, through the Chair, yeah. But Councillor Kaifong is correct. It's around the $500,000 mark.
Excellent, thank you. Another
Subsequent,
question from
sorry.
Councillor Patterson.
And you mentioned the net debt that we're sitting at is $460 million right now. What's the gross debt?
Through the Chair, the gross debt would be about 480. So when we calculate our net debt we look at our current borrowings, our non-current borrowings, and we subtract cash, so we'll be adding that cash balance back in to make the gross, making it about 480.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Chair. What's the strategy going to be in relation to the financial or development contributions? So I think the government signalled later on this year they're changing the ability, is that right, to levy development contributions, and we'll look towards a levy system or something like that. So given that there's sort of that uncertainty and we haven't actually recovered the amount that we thought we would because it's kind of an imprecise method of calculating what we think might flow through the system, how do we ensure that next time when we're doing the budgeting that we have got perhaps a better handle on what the revenue might be from either the levies or the old development contributions? Because I think this has been an item that's been raised as a extraordinary sort of impact right from the beginning of our financial year.
So through the Chair, the reason it's a problem at the moment is because we've just brought in the new policy, so it's a problem that will go away over time. We'll also have the opportunity to address any policy changes to address the shortfall through the next long-term plan. We'll reconsult on a new policy, but just to reiterate that it's not this under collection of DCs to budget is not a long-term issue. It's a short-term issue while we flush through the consents that we had before the policy became operative.
Thanks.
Thank you. And there are no further questions. Thanks. We only need to receive that, but just checking, is there any discussion? No. We will move on, thank you. So now we will be discussing the Recovered Water Management Solution Working Group construct.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Can I just signal that I wish to move an amendment to Section 5 when we come to just to advise you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Are you happy to move that we receive this?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Wang. All those in favour to receive this report, please say aye. And against, that's carried. Thank you. And would now like to invite Stavros to overview this. And this is also on late items agenda, page 8.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the report is in itself self-explanatory. I'd just like to make a couple of comments. As we have been discussing in recent times, one of the major challenges, we have ahead of us with a gradual upgrading of our treatment plant is actually reaching a conclusion or finding a solution with regards to the destination and the location of discharge of our, fully recovered, water treatment plant. We are all aware of some history behind that. These kind of efforts have been ongoing since 2014. And obviously, with the commitments we have made, this council and previous councils to upgrade the treatment plant, we are now in a position where we need to find a solution to that significant assets and a significant service for our population of our districts. In order to try and address both your instructions to actually pursue such a solution in a way that reflects and lessons from the past, we have suggested the formation of a working group through which various solutions could be explored, and you have agreed into a multi-criteria assessment framework that you have ratified only very recently. And obviously that work of the working group will be significant in actually reaching a final recommendation in due course to elected members, not these elected members, but a new council in due course to pursue as a final solution to our recovered water. We believe it's very important that in the composition of the working group reflects the primary interests of that a potential solution may have for our community, and we have suggested the terms of reference, a working group back in July, for which you have adopted and you have agreed to the terms of reference. Now following some further communications and discussions with our partners in terms of the composition of the working group, we are recommending for you the following composition of the working group to include members, elected members, 3 elected members, a Te Tātou Aotearoa representative, mana whenua nominations from 4 entities, 2 community representatives and a youth representative. To that effect, we will seek your approval to that composition of the working group, because the intention is for us to convene the working group in the near future by mid-September and start that significant piece of work. The composition of the group and the characteristics of the group will be very important in terms of navigating through the various options for searching for a solution, and therefore we seek your approval to that composition of the working group. So happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're open for questions. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. Stavros, you said that we are now in a position where we need to find a solution. Weren't we in a position in 2014 where we needed to find a solution?
In 2014, the then Council has agreed, following various legal commitments made earlier, that the recovered water will be removed from the forest. In order to do that, there were 2 significant work streams that need to be undertaken. First was the upgrade of the treatment plant. That has progressed, and we are right now within the next 10 to 12 months of completion of that, of the treatment plant. By doing so, obviously the recovered water will meet all the characteristics and specifications required by resource consents, and therefore the land into the forest would no longer necessary. The second discussion that was taken in 2014 was actually to find an alternative in parallel with the upgrade of the treatment plant to the discharge, and I think the history indicates that there was no consensus at that point in time, and that those alternatives were not fruitful at the time. So we are right now revisiting that issue because the upgrade of the treatment plant is coming close to completion, and therefore it is important to give effect to those commitments to find a final solution to that treated wastewater.
Yes, thank you. I am really quite alarmed and concerned about the proposed makeup of this working group, bearing in mind that elected members would be not the ones making up this committee, but in fact would be in a minority. So that strikes me as being fundamentally undemocratic. I was wondering, it seems to me that this proposed makeup is informed by a particular interpretation of the Treaty of Waitangi section clause of the Local Government Act. And I was wondering whether the Chief Executive might be able to answer a question or two on that topic. Can you clarify, Andrew, whether councils owe duties to comply with the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi?
Councillor, I'm going to try and answer this question as it relates to this topic. I want to be clear that this group has been convened, well, hasn't been convened yet, but has been put together based on a number of workshops with elected members. During those workshops, we heard from elected members the importance of working with mana whenua. We heard the importance of learning the lessons from what we have tried in the past and hasn't worked. We heard messages about considering the intergenerational nature of this project, and we heard considerations around making sure the community broadly has the opportunity to contribute towards it. The working group has been put together with those in mind. It has not been put together in order to take away any decision making from Council. You will see in the terms of reference, which Council adopted last month, that there are recommendations from the working group that come to council for decision making, both at the end of stage 1 and at the end of stage 2. And it's very clear in the terms any of the groups interested in participating in the terms of reference. All of the working group is to provide recommendations to council. So in that context, council will be exercising all of its statutory obligations, including to honour the Treaty of Waitangi, through the various forms of legislation that we are subject to through the council decisions. We are not delegating that to the working group.
Okay, a couple of rapid fire questions, if I may. Was this council a party to the Treaty of Waitangi?
Councillor
It's
Lee,
just a rapid fire question, requires a yes, no. I'm sure it could be.
it's a question that you have consistently tried to raise and you have had it answered. It's in the Local Government Act, Section 4, Treaty of Waitangi,
That's a different.
of which we swore when we declared our oath to act in the best interest of those in our district.
So that doesn't answer my question. So my question is, was this council a signatory to the treaty?
Councillor Lee, this council has obligations under the Local Government Act, of which we're mandated and given powers. You swore an oath to that, so you've personally agreed to support.
So I'm looking at Section 4, the Treaty of Waitangi clause in the Local Government Act, and it talks about the Crown's responsibility to take appropriate account of the principles of the treaty. It doesn't say the council's responsibility to take appropriate account
Point of order.
of the treaty.
Relevance.
Yeah, I agree. That's not relevant. Do you have a question regarding the proposed working group?
No further questions, but I won't be able to support the construct of the working group.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just seeking clarity, and I'm not looking for names, but can you clarify who the Puarenga Reference Group, what is it made up of, please?
Through you, Te Manukura. The Puarenga Reference Group is made up of mana whenua from that particular area, so that would be Tūhaurangi Ngāti Wāhio, Ngāti Whakaue in particular, Ngā Hapu e Toru, which is our eastern side whānau that's set up in that part of the Puarenga. It would also have a representative from the CNI Limited, which is the PSG structure. And I'll look to establish if I captured everyone there. It's Ngā Hapu e Toru, Puarenga, TTA, Tūhaurangi Tribal Authority, and representative from CNI Forest Limited.
So does that include residents of Ngāpuna?
They would be captured through Ngā Hapu e Toru.
Ka pai, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the report. And I will be supporting the recommendations made here. I just want to mention that yesterday afternoon we had the Te Aroa 2050 Vision Committee, and just want to tell my colleagues that there was majority support for the make-up there, and especially for the make-up of the people who are on the what do we call it, the whenua group, or the working party. And as it's been explained, they are recommendations only, and they will come back to the council to make the final decision. All I can say is I'm pleased with the makeup of it, and also having community representatives and a youth representative. This is something I think for me, many years ago, if we'd have had a committee like this, perhaps the Taraweta Sewer scheme would not have cost us millions that we end up having to pay for that there. So, supportive of the motion. Kia ora.
Any further questions? No. Councillor O'Brien, you did signal that you had an amendment.
Yes, Your Worship. So for me, parts 2 and 3 will remain exactly as written. Parts 4 would be changed to fill the community, and instead of ×2 would be ×3, and then the words "and a youth role on the working group" be deleted. Consequently, in section 5, the community representatives would be changed to ×3, and again, youth representative would be deleted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Patterson. Okay. Well, we have a mover and a seconder, so we are now open for discussion. Thank you very much, Stavros and Paul. As the mover, did you wish to start?
Do you mind if I just save it for the conclusion, Your Worship? Thank you.
That's fine. So we're now open for discussion on this item. This is now the motion before us. Yeah. With the removal of specifically mentioning youth representative, but changing community representatives from 2 to 3. Any comments regarding any of it?
No? Can I ask, through to the mover of the motion, why don't you want to have a youth representative on there?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the Chair. Thank you for your question. What my concern, Councillor Maxwell, and I think I've raised this the very first time this was discussed, is that we haven't qualified, one, what youth is, and we haven't qualified what background or experience or expertise we're asking them to bring to this. We're not asking for an elderly representative, we're not asking for representatives from other parts of our community, and it still may be that out of those that are selected, there could be someone, representing youth anyway. But I feel a broader community-wide representation is more the proper vehicle for us. Also, too, bearing in mind this is a very serious and possibly passionate subject over the next few years. So I have concerns that should someone be of a younger, shall we say, age, then possibly this could be a very, at times, negative experience. There's going to be some very strong personalities. We've already seen that this morning. There are going to be some very strong opinions and passionate, shall we say, expressions of interests and also opinions at times. I feel that we need to make sure that we have people that can be okay to experience that, and also perhaps some negative connotations that sometimes we around this table have to put up with in our officials, but that's okay. We're okay for that. We've had it practice. So for those reasons, I'm going to support, obviously I've raised the amendment that we withdraw the youth representative and increase the community representation instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and I talk all the rationale behind that, because this is not just, even though it's may directly impact the people of Ngāpuna and those who live around the Puarenga and Mana Whenua, it's actually an issue for the whole community. So we do need more community-wide voices, and having 3, as Councillor O'Brien rightly pointed out, could include a person from the community, from the youth community, but it could also include someone from the Indian community or the whatever community. It just depends how that's made up. We haven't really decided that. But we need to ensure a wide spread of voices, because this is probably the biggest decision, other than building the plant in the first place. It's what we're going to do with it next. So we've got to get that right. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been thinking about this since, and thank you for your comments, Councillor O'Brien, since this has been raised, and I understand. And I understand where you're coming from that. Having had the time to think about it, I do support this amendment. And in saying that, however, I would like, I guess, some assurance from the CE that there would be engagement done with youth groups, for example, our youth council, or our other avenues of consultation with Rangatahi around this, being, as you've mentioned, the intergenerational issue of this discharge and the infrastructure. I think I agree that this is a hugely complex, and I can imagine, it would be extremely intimidating for a young person to sit on here with the expertise and the complexity of the subject. And although it would be great to have that voice at the table, I wouldn't want to put someone who is, as you said, someone who is potentially 15 or something around a table with serious expert, say engineers or whatever it may be. So if I could have that assurance that, that there would be that engagement with youth groups, and that way we can put this information in a way that is digestible to them, that they can absorb and understand it better, and engage better with their perspective, rather than put a young person on there who would have school commitments in that as well. The timing would be an issue as well. So if I could have that assurance, I'm happy to be supporting this, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor O'Brien's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Lee, followed by Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think Councillor Wang can speak with some authority about the challenges that a youth member would have dealing with a controversial topic such as this one. So I would tend to support your motion, Councillor O'Brien, as one small step in the right direction of this committee. It's an interesting coincidence that this morning we were presented with performance measures that showed that only 41% of residents agree with how the decisions made by council represent the best interests of the district. I can recall getting up at the Novotel before the last election and reminding all of you and the other candidates that our public declaration that we make at the start of the term is to act in the best interests of the district. And I went so far as to say, just for the sake purpose of clarity, not the best interests of Te Arawa. What I can see from the makeup of this committee is a decision that many in the community would perceive as being in the best interests of Te Arawa and not necessarily the best interests of the district. I would argue that the best interests of the district are represented by what shows up on the ratepayers' rates bills. And it's manifestly obvious that the least expensive option, the simplest option, is to take the recovered water and put it into the Paringa stream. That saves the cost of pumping all of 20 million litres of water a day uphill, which I understand is $2 million a year. So to even contemplate all of these other wacky options boggles my mind. And I just cannot support this whole process. I don't believe it's in the best interests of the ratepayers of Rotorua. And so while I support the one small step in the right direction, Councillor O'Brien, I can't support the proposal at all.
It is incredibly disappointing, some of your comments again, Councillor Lee. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and that's the beauty of having a good debate in the council, and thank you for the answer, the move of the motion, Councillor O'Brien. You've helped me rethink because this is so important, but it's been some good, I've listened to all my colleagues in that here, even one that I don't agree with, but not Ada, and thank you. I was thinking, hang on a moment, our elected members, Councillor Wang being the youngest one, could be somebody who's put there by the whole of the community and everything, but even what he said made good sense. So this is important, and I'll be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Just checking if there are any final comments, and then I'll give mine and see if the mover has the right to reply. Nope. Okay. Well, I'd just like to start by saying I think that it's fantastic that we are involving our community, in particular mana whenua, more. We have seen this council suffer multi-million-dollar mistakes in the past by not doing so, and this can only result in the best outcome for all of our district. And I do want to note that the final decision does sit with the council. That will always come back to the council, but what this does is allow very early on in the process for those who are directly impacted. Although we don't have youth representative up there anymore, I will still encourage young people in the community to apply as a community representative, because honestly I'm just consistently blown away every time I visit one of our schools or talk with our youth council on not only their intelligence but their capability to deal with difficult situations. They have gone through a number of crises in their lifetimes already, financial, environmental, and I'm sure that their contribution either now or through the wider community consultation in future will be very meaningful. I am also deeply saddened that some of the focus on the discussion today has once again been race-based. I think it's really unfortunate that people can't see the benefits of dealing with not only Māori in our community, but also private owners of the land and the lakes on which we are discussing. Rotorua Lakes Trust and the Puringa Reference Group are incredibly important. Rotorua Lakes Trust own 14 of our lakes and have been able to manage not only the economic benefits but also the environmental impacts to those lakes. So their view would be especially meaningful, and I'm glad that we are including them in here as well. So our Māori and iwi community play a really important role here in Rotorua, and as has been mentioned, we did declare an oath and we did commit to fulfilling our duties under the Local Government Act, which very clearly includes the Treaty of Waitangi and, quote, provide principles and requirements for local authorities that are intended to facilitate participation by Māori in local authority decision-making processes, not just engagement, but also the decisions that we undertake. So really pleased to have them assisting us with this. So we will now, unless the mover wants a right of reply, we will now put it to the vote. What's your point of order?
Misrepresentation.
How so?
My concerns are not race-based. My concerns are democracy-based and law-based, and ensuring that our council operates within the four corners of the Local Government Act.
And that's precisely why I quoted to you for what feels like the millionth time the Treaty of Waitangi and how that.
That's why I asked those questions this morning that unfortunately Andrew chose not to answer.
They're not relevant.
But if
Andrew answered your question incredibly well, Councillor Lee, we will move on now. You have a personal opinion that we do not share.
That is correct.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship. And can I just add my support and endorsement of your comments that you've just made? Thank you. I won't raise again because I've already made my point, so my colleagues can decide how they want to vote. But can I just say, when Councillor Lee says that we're here to act on behalf of the entire community, that's what I feel we're doing. Now, Councillor Lee may disagree with that, that's fair enough. I could reread a passage I read out yesterday from a speech Councillor Lee gave out at some point about a piece of land that meant a lot to him, and I take that sincerely, by the way, I'm not having a crack, about it being a taonga and about it being his tūranga waiwai. I fully accept that, and I don't belittle that or degrade those comments at all. But if it's okay for him to feel, and some of the people that he claims to represent about a piece of land, why is it not okay for parts of Te Arawa to feel connection to their land or waters or aspects of the environment? When he says that we're acting for Te Arawa, I'm acting for the people that put me here who said, I'm sick and tired of seeing this council in court. I'm sick and tired of things being rammed through with no consultation. Well, for goodness sakes, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think we had 2 workshops as councillors on this, which I think were open. Sorry, from memory. We've had 2 meetings, at least, including when we adopted this as a council. We had a meeting yesterday with the Tātou Committee. One of the things I always ask when things go wrong in this place is, what have we learned? Because you can't change what's already happened, but you can learn from the mistakes and try and, which I think is what people ask us to do. Well, everything that we set out on this process is to try and find a practical solution, and I doubt if we're going to find a solution, no matter what it is, that 100% of this community is going to buy. So, as I've stated before, some of us are going to have to swallow, right throughout this community, are going to have to swallow some dead rats, because there's going to be some things, whether it's on the cost side, whether it's on the solutions-based side, there's going to be things here that we don't like. So we all have to work together on this as far as, doesn't mean we have to agree on what the final of those solutions are, but we must be united and we must work together as a community, because we don't want to be divided again and again and again and end up in court where nothing gets resolved. So with my amendment, I fully support this process. I fully support and thank our staff and your leadership on this for how we've approached this. Very difficult, and it's going to be difficult ongoing. Because it will be a very passionate issue. It is going to fire up debate. Some of that will get out of hand, as it always does, not always helped by everyone in this room. But what we need to do is to be as far as possible as united and work through this very important issue sensibly, calmly, and with common sense. So thank you, Your Worship.
Point of order.
And thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. What is your point of order, Councillor Lee?
Misrepresentation. I'm wondering if Councillor O'Brien...
Councillor Lee, I don't agree that there's been any misrepresentation.
Well, you haven't heard what my claim was yet.
I have the ability as Chair to decide on a point of order immediately. That was not misrepresentation.
You have an impressive crystal ball, Your Worship.
We will carry on. I am quite within my rights as Chair in operating under standing orders. Thank you very much, councillors. There's been a very good discussion on this. I will just ask that you raise your hands whether you support. That is moved by Councillor O'Brien.
Point of clarification?
Yep.
Are we going to vote on the amendment separately from the substantive motion?
This is the substantive motion.
As amended?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's point 2, 3, 4 and 5, and just noting the change of youth representative in youth role and addition of community representative to 3. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? That is carried. Thank you. So we will now move into public excluded, and then we'll just take a very short break before we carry on. So that's been moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wang. I just advise that there will be 5 items we're considering in public excluded, and consideration has been given to public interest in these matters, and officers' advice is the reasons for confidentiality outweigh public interest in these matters. The items are confidential minutes of both the council meeting and also Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting, appointment of hearing commissioners for plan changes 8 and 10, Rotorua sewage scheme enforcement, a verbal update on draft annual report, and the matters have been, the reasons have been stated in your agenda. So that has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you. We'll just take a quick 5-minute break.